On this week's episode of the Geek State, dust off those old cartridges, fire up your SNES. We're talking retro video games.
We worked tirelessly to collect and respond to some geek expert questions.
Did we get Bandersnatched? All that and much more.
Introducing the next generation from Nintendo. New Super Mario World. Created especially for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It's a bit more exciting, a bit more challenging, a bit more graphic, a bit more colorful, a bit more realistic, a bit more levels, a bit more secret, a bit more enemies, a bit more friends, a bit more sound, a bit hotter, a bit cooler, a bit weird, a bit more revolutionary, a bit more Mario, a bit more of what you want. It's 16-bit, and it's yours only if you get new Super Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Stand by alert.
This is it!
Thank you, but your podcast is in another castle. This is the Geek State.
From Hyrule to the Mushroom Kingdom, we are the Geek State. I'm Chris, and joining me as always, my buddy James. James, it's episode 2. How's it going?
It is episode 2. It's going well. So far, episode 2 is going just as good, if not better, than episode 1. I'm very excited about it. Very excited to be here.
We're just seconds in.
People enjoyed episode 1.
It sounds like, I want to, thanks for kind of bringing that part up, because thank you so much. As of recording tonight, the show's only been live for like 3 days, and we have been overwhelmed by the number of 5-star ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts. So first and foremost, thank you guys so much for getting out there and being a part of the Geek State.
And we are now, as of today, as of yesterday, available on Stitcher and some of the Android, for my Android brethren, some of those apps. If we are not available on your app of choice, please let us know, and we will see what we can do to get there.
Exactly. So if you're listening to the show right now, then you're good. If you're not listening to the show, well, it doesn't matter. But you may want to know too that we're also on Spotify and TuneIn, and I'm working on getting it enabled for your Amazon Echo devices, so that you can just ask for the show to start. So that's like next level stuff, but super pumped to be on Spotify. Apple Podcasts, of course, being 70% of how people listen to podcasts, but Spotify has been increasing in their podcasting and how people are finding shows. So welcome if you're listening to us on Spotify and, of course, everywhere else. This is the Geek State, the pop culture geek podcast, bringing you what's going on in the world of geek, plus interesting looks at different topics. And this week we're doing a bit of retro video games, but I wanted to start off, James, with a brief little conversation. Last week I caught Netflix's Black Mirror movie called Bandersnatch, and I wanted to bring it up here on this show because first of all, it revolves around the world of 1980s game development, and of course there's a bit of a gimmick, a bit of a little twist in this type of narrative structure, because if you're familiar, Bandersnatch is a movie on Netflix that lets you select the choices that our main character gets to encounter. I watched this show on my phone in bed, like at way past my bedtime. I'm a grown-up, I don't have a bedtime, but it was like 12:30. It was like 12:30 at night, and right. I had trouble sleeping afterwards, and I know that you got a chance to watch Bandersnatch. So before I kind of give my initial opinions, thoughts, James, what did you think about this show?
I thought it was fine. I thought that in my eyes, I always look at something when it is new. It is a new idea or a new way of taking in entertainment, much like PlayStation VR or something like that. I always look at it as if it was the PlayStation 1 and now we are at PlayStation 4, and you look at the vast difference between what you could do on PlayStation 1 versus what you can do on PlayStation 4. Yeah. That's how I kind of think about it. So I think of this as the PlayStation 1 of this type of media, right? Okay. And I like the potential that it can be. I felt like it was very reverse hourglass. You start at the same point, it gets wide in the middle, and then it comes right back. Kind of all of the endings are very similar, without excluding a couple of the Easter egg ones that exist out there. If you make a certain set of decisions, I enjoyed it, but at the same time, I was never given the option to make a decision that I would make. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was always made to make one of two bad decisions or one of two things that I wouldn't do. Like at one point, without spoiling anything, at one point I had an option to destroy my computer or yell at my dad. And it's like, I'm not doing either of those.
I gotta say,
I got my ass beat as a kid.
I would always
breaking my things and talking back. So
no, exactly. There's well, the movie it's kind of meta because the movie's all about free will and free choice. And it's sort of like us as the viewer, we're led to believe we have this choice, but then it's sort of like, well, we actually don't. We're sort of led down this path. Every time there was an option of doing something wrong to the computer, like throwing my tea on it or something, or like yell at my dad, I was like, God, but I want to finish this video game, so I'm going to yell at my dad, you know?
Yeah, right, exactly. But like I said, I enjoyed it. But the only thing that I didn't like is I felt like the choices that you made in the end, for the most part, didn't really matter. But other than that, it was enjoyable to experience. And I think if Black Mirror interests you at all, or the Twilight Zone-esque type, themed stories interest you at all, it's definitely worth checking out. But it's not something that I would like do multiple times or really want to sit and watch all the way through again. The one thing that I did like is once you got to an ending, it did give you kind of flash, at least I watched it I did it on PS4. It gave you kind of flash points to go back to, and then start again from there, which I did like. Yes,
exactly. Well, most people make the mistake. There's like, a choice early on that you make this, decision and the movie's over. And it's like, oh, okay. And there's a lot of Easter eggs you can do by when you go back in time and you pick the same choice again. You don't always get the same thing. I'm not gonna go further into what I thought very much, because I do think it kind of echoes what you just said. I think it's a really interesting first step. I mean, Netflix did a thing with like Puss in Boots or something, and it was sort of interactive, and it was sort of like this thing. It was kind of their first test. But I would really like to see them do something more like this, but not so meta, where it's not all about choices and stuff. I mean, it was a really interesting first venture into this this world.
Kind of when I look at this is what I think it could become is almost like a, obviously Telltale just went out of business recently, but like their Walking Dead series was very popular. And it was all decision based, and its decisions really did change what you did in subsequent episodes and things like that. So I think it can become that, but obviously it's a concept, I think.
Yeah, I think I would even if the development of this in the live action format is too expensive or too time intensive, I think that I would still enjoy getting those Telltale games. Take some of the game parts out of it. Where you have to do something quick. To avoid something or whatever, and it's just that with the story, and then just letting me make some decisions.
Right. Yeah, I mean, definitely.
On Netflix. I mean, I think that would be super interesting. Well, check out Bandersnatch. It's on Netflix. It's free. It's not going anywhere because Netflix owns it. So, check it out. I did have a little bit of disappointment. It does not work on the Apple TV. For whatever reason, at this point, Apple TV's Netflix app doesn't support that title. But if you can on your phone, you can do it on Fire TV and that kind of stuff. So check it out. Also going on in the world of geek right now is the Consumer Electronics Show down in Las Vegas. I'm kind of disappointed. I was really hoping to come on the show and bring like some really weird gadget. It's like the only thing I could find was a suitcase that follows you around, and I was like, that's not even weird enough to spend much time on. Also, both of us, we've talked about VR in the past. I've got an Oculus Go, which I think is pretty entertaining and fun. I haven't used it in about a month, but I have used it more than I thought I would. There's not a lot of VR stuff this year at CES, and so I'm wondering kind of where we're headed with that. We've got the Oculus Quest coming out with the Vader Immortal, which is going to be a launch title for that. It's a standalone system like the Oculus Go. And then I also want to get a moment of correction. Last week, we talked about the impact of Star Wars. So if you haven't heard that episode, head over to episode 1 and check out our look at how Star Wars impacted the world of filmmaking, spun off some really awful ripoffs, and how it impacted the world of filmmaking. And one of the things we talked about was Star Wars really was like the birth of the franchise and the sequel. And we couldn't on the show think of any sequels, and somebody on Twitter, my friend Rich, sent me a message saying, what about Godzilla? Fine. Thank you. I'll count it. I will count it because yes, there were Godzilla movies, and they were sequels, but different than what we intended, but also loving the feedback. So when you hear something, if we mess up, please call us out on our garbage. We want to hear it because we want to be accurate. I accidentally tweeted an image that I thought was true on Twitter of the Dark Phoenix poster. Totally fooled me. It was fan art. Thank God.
It certainly looked like fan art.
I never know these days. Sometimes
it was awful.
The X-Men doesn't have a great track record of putting out amazing posters.
Yeah, but I don't know. I agree with you that I didn't know that it was fake, but it looked so bad. It had the same character on it multiple times, and it was just weird. It was bad. It was real bad. But we weren't the only ones that got fooled by that, though.
No. I saw it all over Twitter. So no, not a big deal.
Yes, and I also have a correction to make. And not really a correction, but it was just when listening back to the podcast, it made me sound like I said something that I did not intend to say. We were talking about how I had the new studio set up and I was influenced by the comic book wall and the video games. And I said that what I intended to say originally was that I had around 400 games. And then I was like, well, that's wrong because I have 100 N64 games, including my Japanese and American titles. So I was like, well, then it's way more than that. So I said 1,000, but it came out saying 4,000, and I don't own every game that came out in the 90s. So no, I just want to be very clear that I do not own 4,000 games. According to my catalog, I have 1,126 games. So working on getting to 4,000, but not quite there yet. So I just wanted to be very clear that I do not own everything.
No.
But kind of transitioning from that, I saw a pretty fun, interesting news story, or not even really a news story. It was just a blip, but apparently somebody got bored setting up for a game at the Royals Stadium and decided to play some Mario Kart 8 on the Jumbotron.
Which is freaking awesome.
And it was picked up by a news blimp, not blimp, but helicopter. So the only problem with that is it's an old monitor. Aspect ratio is a little bit off, but the
little things.
Yeah, it's the little things that would bother me. I got to see that blue shell coming.
All right, James, let's play with some power. How about some superpower? We're going to talk about retro games in this week's episode. And being a child of the 80s, James, you're a child of the 90s. I would say your formative years.
Yes, I would say I'm a child of the 90s. I'm a little bit younger than you. But
yes, only a little. Only a little. It's very minuscule. It's almost nothing at all. It's maybe like 10 years. Maybe. But there is some overlap because I feel like the two consoles that we're going to really spend some time with today stretched beyond what consoles nowadays have. I feel, I grew up with the NES and SNES, and you probably came along where, maybe older brother had an NES and you had some of the games.
Yeah, we definitely had an NES. I grew up with an NES, and then we never had an SNES. We went from NES to Genesis.
Oh, you were that guy.
So, well, I was the guy who took what his parents gave him. So whatever the cousins got, we got the remnants.
Yeah.
We got whatever, whenever they upgraded, we got theirs. So until the N64, which we bought with our own money. But yeah, so I don't have too many SNES memories. I'm a little more Sega, but we definitely played SNES. I mean, everybody's had at least a friend who had one. And I think kind of one of the fun things about the SNES that people don't think about is we're almost at 30 years that this thing's been around. I mean, it came out in Japan in 1990, came to America in 91. And like in my brain, that just doesn't seem right. I think of it more of like a 93, 94, but that's when you're 94, you're getting into PlayStation. So it's kind of just in my brain. It doesn't seem like it's been that long.
Oh, no, absolutely not. It seems literally like yesterday when I start thinking about SNES and when that came into my life. Now, I never actually owned an SNES myself. My best friend across the street had one, and that was good enough for me, because we were either at my house or his house, and if we were at his house, he had SNES and Sega, so we got to play. Yeah, that means we got to play Mortal Kombat with the blood. So
yeah,
that was
crushing it.
It was exciting. That was good stuff. So I was thinking, looking back, on retro gaming and its resurgence and its popularity and ways that you can play these games now. They didn't just go away like some other consoles. Atari's tried again and again and again to get our retro console. You play Pitfall on your 4K TV. Nothing really sticks, but when you're playing with Nintendo, the stuff is evergreen. It's so classic. It doesn't go away. And I have spent some time with my NES Classic and SNES Classic. And, of course, I'm sure you've either done that or you've, spent some time in emulators kind of reliving your childhood. And I was like, let's talk about our favorite old, classic video games that you could still literally jump in, play, and remember where all the secrets are and all that,
Right. Yeah. So the first one that comes to mind when anyone says, favorite retro game, first one that ever comes to mind is a cheap title. You can get it now for like $6 on NES called Captain Skyhawk. And it's not the best game ever. It's a top-down shooter. But it's, every other level. So the first level is a top-down shooter. And then the second level is a dogfight simulator. So it's more of an afterburner. I don't know if you've ever played that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very similar to that.
I played the shit out of that at Mazio's Pizza.
Mazio's Pizza.
Yeah,
love Mazio's
on the arcade.
But yeah, so the every other level is kind of a dogfight level. But I remember it's the first game that I ever played that was like quote unquote 3D. I mean, it's all, individual polygons, but they're made to look 3D. So, and you could move your ship up and down and side to side a little bit. So it was kind of, it was ahead of its time.
This was on the NES?
It was on NES. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
It's definitely worth checking out. It's a lot of fun. And my parents actually bought it for us for Christmas, and they their big thing, on Christmas, whenever we opened presents, we didn't open presents on Christmas morning. They were just there, right? So they were out. So they had already opened up the game and been playing it all night, apparently. So we woke them up in the morning and they had like an hour of sleep because they were like addicted to this game.
That's incredible.
That's a big one for me. And then the other NES one that I put down is one that we wore out the Blockbuster of. We used to have a Blockbuster behind our house. We'd go there all the time, and it is Adventure Island 3, which I don't know if you've ever played this, but it's side scroller game. And then honorable mention would be Little Nemo Adventures in Dreamland, or the Dream Master.
Oh,
Little Nemo the Dream Master, is that what it's called?
Is that it? I feel like it's Adventures in Dream.
The movie's called one thing and the game's called something else.
Gotcha.
Give me half a second. I can tell you.
Yeah, and while you're looking that up, I'll start with my first one. My first and foremost, beyond any other game, is going to be Mega Man 2. I got it for my birthday. I remember exactly where I was. We were, as a family, we were in Colorado on a vacation, and we used to play that kind of like hot or cold where you walk around the house and they're like hidden presents and stuff. Well, this was hidden behind a curtain in this cabin. And I remember getting it and being so excited, and then that excitement being dashed so quickly because we were on vacation and I was going to be there for another like 2 weeks. So
nowhere to play.
There was nowhere to play. So you just spend the whole time looking at the box art. And, of course, back in the day, you got the instruction manual and it had like information about all the people. And I would look at the pictures. And of course, the game looks nothing like what's, on the box art for, especially back in the day with the Capcom stuff. But
yeah, especially Mega Man 1.
Oh,
it's like the most infamous box art of all time.
It's amazing. I love the story behind the making of Mega Man 2. Apparently, Mega Man did so poorly in sales that they did not immediately warrant a sequel. But the creators were like, no, we really want to. And they said, fine, you can make Mega Man 2, but you have to do it basically on your own time. You have to keep working on these other games. And if you can make Mega Man 2, great, we'll put it out. But, and they did, and it was a huge success. I don't think if it had not been for them, using their own personal time. Mega Man's turned into a massive franchise. They just celebrated 30 years. I think the 30 years was technically in 2017, but 2018, there's a whole bunch of merchandise that's come out. Lots of Funko Pops and action figures and a bunch of other stuff.
A solid gold amiibo.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have that one. And then one of the other games that I have an affinity for, the music I can hear in my head right now, is a game called Mappy Land. And I don't know why I have this game. I don't know who bought it. I don't know why I bought it, or was it a gift? I feel like it was a gift because it's a very childish game with a mouse, and it's mappy. I mean, it's not like a totally unknown game, but Mappy Land was like a side scroller platformer type of game, and you jump on these things, and there's a cat. But it was awesome, and of course, my wrapping this up, Super Mario 3. You can't sit through a 2-hour movie commercial of Super Mario 3 and not be permanently embedded in your brain after watching The Wizard, because you have to explore and you have to get those warp whistles. You got to do all that stuff. I remember we didn't buy this game right away. My dad rented it, and he rented it for the full 5 days, which was, back in the day, like I thought, like, wow, like, did he get a raise? Is this bonus money? Like, what is this? But we kept playing it, and then he renewed it for another week, and then he just right out bought it. So, that too. So let's start talking about Super Nintendo, before we start talking about some weird stuff and some ways that you can play video games, like these right now. Super Nintendo comes along. Of course, I didn't get one, so I spent most of that time playing, I feel like Street Fighter was to me like the thing that really showed off Super Nintendo. It felt like I was like in an arcade. Like that was the first title that I played that I was like, this is just like the arcade. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah. I was the exact same way with Primal Rage.
Oh, that's a great one.
Which is very similar as far as that. You're playing it, and it doesn't look as good as it is in the arcade, but you tell yourself it does, that kind of thing.
You squint a little bit.
Yes. But my brother and I played a ton of Primal Rage, both in the arcade and at home, with that. And then another kind of arcadey game that we played was Turtles in Time, was another big one. That was a staple. That
game, I remember, of course, anytime you talk about retro games, you're going to be thrown into this like portal of, nostalgia. Like that's just inevitable. I remember I was at like a lock-in, a sleepover lock-in type of thing, for Boy Scouts, and somebody had an SNES. So the first time I ever saw it, and the only game they had was Turtles in Time that they brought. And you had a yellow legal pad, and there's probably about 40 guys in our troop at this lock-in, and he had sign-ups. And I was like brand new and this, 11 years old, and I would go and I signed my name up, and I was like, I'm never going to get to play. And I never did.
Oh,
because people were too good, like until you died, and and it was time to bring somebody else in. I was like, God. So I watched a bunch of teenagers play Turtles in Time for hours until I like passed out because I was a lightweight and couldn't make it the whole night. Because that's what you do, Chris. Right? Like at lock-ins, you try to I'm going to stay up all night. I'm not going to go to sleep.
Slowly fade.
It's like the
you're either a zombie the next day or you act like a normal human being.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was 11. Come on. The SNES though had some weird stuff, and I didn't know this until kind of doing some research. NES had some interesting things, right? Like it had the robot and like the power pad. Like that was really cool. I didn't know this, James. Tell me if you've already heard this story or not, but back in the 90s, Nintendo was trying to make the SNES something, like it's more than just this, it's more than that. Mm-hmm. And they've done that all the time too, like with the Wii, they did, all this stuff. But they partnered with Life Cycle, and they made a thing called the Exertainment Bike. And it was it was just a Life Cycle, like a regular, what do you call it? Stationary bike, an exercise bike, but it had, electro connection that you could make to the Nintendo. And this was like one of the first times I've ever seen the SNES's, expansion slot being used, because you had to put this dock on the bottom of your SNES, and you had two games. And one was called Mountain Bike Rally, which came with the device. And then another one called, they sold a bundle, like a 3-pack, and it had a Speed Racer game. And you just pedaled the bike to go forward. And then on the grips of the bike, you had like a half of an SNES controller on each side.
Yes. So I have heard of this. Not only have I heard of this, I've ridden on the Life Cycle Exertainment bike. A vendor at one of the Dallas Comic-Cons had the Exertainment bike. And I was surprised he was allowing people to ride it, being how expensive it was. But
it is insane.
They're quite rare, but he did not have Speed Racer. He only had the mountain bike game. He might have had Speed Racer, but it wasn't.
That was locked up, right? Like they keep that.
Yeah, I would assume so. So, yes, the Life Cycle Exertainment bike is it's interesting. It's very 90s.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny because like Nintendo has constantly tried to be like, look, video games is for fitness. You can do fitness.
And that's, like you said, that's something that they've always tried to do. And they've always also, for, the North American audience, they've always tried to make it trendy or make it look the way other things look, if that makes sense. Like the reason that the NES looks the way that it does is because they wanted to make it look like a VCR.
Right, because the Famicom,
they didn't want it sticking out the top. They didn't want the cartridge sticking out of the top because it just wouldn't fit in with the average American household. So they wanted something that would look good sitting next to a VCR. Yeah. And so this is another one where they just kind of hopped onto the fad. I mean, the 80s and 90s were ripe with fitness, jazzercising and exercise bands and stationary bikes and things like that. So I think this is another example of them just trying to stay on that trend, which this one didn't work quite as well as the Wii did. They struck gold with the Wii, but
I feel like Wii Fit. I think you can classify that one as a success. I think they had a pretty good success with Wii Fit to some degree. I'm sure much more than this exercise bike. The thing that I thought was funny about this was that you could actually have 2 players. So like your mom could be on the exercise bike and you could be player 2 racing her.
It's like, Mom, get it together. It's like, funny aside about the Wii Fit balance board. So there's a retro store here in Dallas that I frequent pretty regularly, and I've been back into the back room of it, and it's essentially where old consoles and things go to die that they're using for parts and things. Yeah. And they have literally a wall of just balance boards. It has to be 60 balance boards that they have in this place that I guess people have just brought in whenever they bring their Wiis, because they'll pay decent money for Wiis because it's a cheaper option for GameCubes and things like that. Yeah. Because it plays the GameCube games. But so they just have this wall of balance boards where they wanted to buy the Wii, but they had to take the balance board too. So
I'm surprised they're holding on to them, like why?
I mean, I don't know. Interesting. I think there's a few locations of this place, and so I would assume that it would take a bit for them to throw it away. Maybe somebody higher up would need to tell them that it's okay. I don't know. I don't ask questions, but at this point, it's like an oddity. It's it's interesting to see. So.
In recent years, retro games have made a huge comeback. Obviously, that nostalgia plays a huge part into it. We're growing up. We have expendable income. We're looking for ways to kind of relive our youth. Just as the same thing happened, to our parents and whatever they were into. They, spend a bunch of money to kind of collect all the stuff that they didn't have when they were kids. And you can play retro games literally anywhere. There's lots of different ways. Obviously, we're not going to talk too much about the ways that violate, laws and stuff. But recently, now, if you are somebody who is dabbling in the ROMs and emulators, just take note, especially if you're giving or making those ROMs available. This happened over the summer, but 2 ROM sites, loveroms.com and loveretro.com, which they don't exist right now, so it's okay for me to say this. They were taken down. They were sued over the summer, and they reached a very large settlement. It's still up in the air whether or not they'll have to pay. The judge still has to do some law stuff, but it was $12 million. $12.2 million in favor of Nintendo.
Yeah, I think it was $60,000 per title that they had on the site or something crazy like that.
That's crazy. I mean, thankfully, I already have a backup.
I mean, they'll never have to pay for it. I mean, if anything, that they will have I would assume that they would have their sites set up as businesses if they were receiving money through the site via ad revenue. And then they would just turn around and file for bankruptcy on that business, would be my guess, if they set it up well. I don't know.
That's true.
I doubt any money will actually go to Nintendo. I would assume that they do this to keep people at bay. The biggest problem I have with this is I wish Nintendo, if they're going to do this, make these games available. I would pay for them.
Right.
And a lot of people would. A lot of people would. I
think so too. And I think that there's not a viable marketplace like there is for, like, say, iTunes. Yes. iTunes comes along and it's like, oh, yeah, you had this old vinyl record, but here it is. You can buy it. You can buy it by the song. You can buy the album. There's not something like this. Exactly. Now, for a while, in the Wii days, they had like the virtual console. And it seemed like that's what Nintendo was kind of doing. Like, okay, here's all these games and we're going to keep releasing them. And then, you buy the Nintendo Switch and it's like, oh, you can't get none of that. You can't have that. That was Wii stuff. You can't, those don't.
Right. And they have started it up a little bit with the, Nintendo or the Switch Online.
Yes.
It has a downloadable app that has, I think, like 40 games somewhere in there on there. But I mean, it's just so you have no choice. Yeah, for some games, the way I see it is right now, there's no way for me to purchase a game that came out on the NES and I do buy games that are on the NES. I own a ton, but if there's something that I want to play and I don't own it, I either have to buy it online or buy it, or, obviously I can buy it from somebody locally or whatever,
right.
But none of that money goes to Nintendo. None of that money goes to anyone who made the game. So it's almost like it's borderline a victimless crime because there's no other way to do it.
Exactly.
So it's one of those. It's a very hot button item.
Yep.
I mean, because even in my collection, there are some games that I want to play, but I'm not going to pay $300 for the cartridge, right? So I can get online on AliExpress.com, which is pretty much the Chinese Amazon, where people are making reproduction carts and selling them for $7.
Right.
So I'll buy one of those and I can put it in my NES and it plays just like an NES game. So, but if it were available, an easy way for me to play it on
because
Switch, I would do that and I would pay for that.
Because you don't want to have to wait 2 weeks to get something from AliExpress. If you had the option of being on your Switch right now and saying like, oh, this is this game that I've always wanted to play and now I can pay $4 for it, or something,
I would pay
something
a
like
premium
that.
for it.
Oh yeah.
Because honestly, I'm running out of space anyway. So the more that I can do just digitally off of the Switch store, the better.
Exactly. The room can only be so big. Say that to my Funko collection. We'll talk about that another day. I had to move a bunch of stuff into one of my guest room closets. So the Switch does have some options. Now, of course, Nintendo made some serious bank recently with the NES and SNES Classic. We won't even get into the whole PlayStation Classic because that's been a disaster. But the NES Classic,
the heavily discounted PlayStation Classic.
Yeah, like starting for like a week, it was at retail price, and then like the next week, it was $40 off.
Yep, everywhere has it for $60 now. So I needed to come down another $20, and then I might buy one for the shelf.
Maybe it's just yeah, exactly. It's a display item only. It's cool because it's a tiny PlayStation, right? It's like the SNES Classic. Those are just those always get attention when people come over if they've never seen one before, and they're like, "What is this? Oh my god, it's so small!" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a Linux box and it's running emulators."
And people are talking bad about the UI of it, like the way it looks, but I know what they were going for. They were going for what a PlayStation 1 memory card when you're going through your memory card looks like, but it just looks bad.
Exactly.
It looks super bland, but God love them for trying.
No, I know exactly. So if you're looking to play some retro games, the SNES and NES Classics are a good option. Now, just fair warning, if you see them in stores, now's probably a good time to still pick one up because I know at least the NES Classic has ended its production. So whatever's in stores right now, or, in the warehouses at Walmart or whatever. I know my local Walmart still has SNES Classic still on the shelf, but your mileage is definitely going to vary on that. The games, you got about 30 on the NES, 20 on the SNES Classic. Also, if you like really old stuff like MS-DOS games, or even there's over 1,000 arcade games that you can play for free and legal at archive.org. That's the Internet Archive. You just click the video games stuff, and it's got a ton of stuff. A lot of old MS-DOS games I remember playing, like either on school or I had like a shareware copy of. There's a lot of stuff that's available for free and legal, so check that out. We would also really like to know what your favorite classic retro video game was and retro video game memories are. Let us know on Twitter. We're at the Geek State Pod. James, it's pretty common knowledge that we are experts in all things geek, right?
Literally all things geek.
Every single topic, anything possibly that you could imagine, we are the experts in. And this is our opportunity to flex those expert muscles in our Geek Expert section. You've sent us some questions on Twitter. We pulled a few off of my favorite source of comedy, Yahoo Answers, and we're going to answer these questions. People have questions, we've got answers. So I'm gonna read this first question. James, I'm gonna shoot this one at you. Okay. All right. So this is a anonymous Yahoo Answers user. As a PC, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Wii U games, do you know... Hold on. Do you have to know all about computers? Because I don't, but I still want to create video games one day. Can I just come up with the ideas and have other people do the actual programming and they write the code? With me writing the story and coming up with the designs, then they create it? I've been sewer good at math. It hurts my brain. Oh, I've never been sewer good at math. It hurts my brain. James, how can we help this guy?
I don't know that we can. I can advise them that, yes, this is an option. You have game designers and then you have game programmers and you have your creative team and then you have your make it happen team. Much like when you're building a building, you have your architect and then you have your civil engineer. Here's what we want done. Can we do it? There's two sides to the coin. Yes, you can follow your dreams and design a video game if you so choose to. And I hope you have great ideas. I think it's perfectly fine for you to want to do that.
My favorite part is with me writing the story and coming up with the designs, then later he misspells the word super. I feel like let's work on that part first, and then get with us in 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, and we would love to review your exciting video game right here on the Geek State.
The game will have a sewer great math.
It'll be a math game. By that point, he'll be really good at math.
Math Blaster 12.
Oh God, I don't know
what Math Blaster's at. I had Math Blaster 3 Search for Spot. It was a play on Search for Spock.
It was clever, very clever.
We'll talk about that on the next episode of Nerd County.
Oh, can't wait.
So we did get another question submitted to us from one of our very good friends, Armando, who is at Kotji, Kotji. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I may not be, though. But Chris, this one I believe is to you.
Yes.
Which is, what is a good manga to start with? Hashtag Geek Experts.
Oh, actually, I think that one is from Daniel.
That one's from Daniel.
Sorry,
I apologize.
My show notes
are a little... Gotcha.
Yeah.
I apologize, Daniel. That is from Daniel Farn at DFARN.
Yes. So, Daniel, I'm glad you asked that question because all of my friends know how much I know about this subject. Now, I know that you probably did this this tweet on your phone, and phones notoriously autocorrect. I was trying to write the word Goonies the other day, and it said homies, and I just stuck with it. So I think what you're trying to ask is what's a good Zanga to start with? Zanga as a blogging platform doesn't exist anymore. But if you're looking to start your own blog, I think that it's really important to write about the things that you know. So if there is a topic or a niche or something that you're really interested in, I think you should do that. I think, start up a WordPress or something since Zanga's not in existence anymore. But thanks for your question.
And if you do want a good manga, I've heard of Fist of a North Star. That's the only one I've ever heard of. So I enjoy that. I was totally. And I assume Yu-Gi-Mon.
Is that a thing? Yeah, I don't know. Yu-Gi-Mon? Digi Yu-Gi-Mon. Yeah.
Digi Yu-Gi-Mon.
Yeah.
Blue eyes, green eye, white dragon.
Exactly. Well, Armando wrote and on Twitter at Kochi, and he did hashtag Geek Experts. Will James's show be back? When will the weather report return? Can you have a Transformers episode? Can Jovial J and Jedi Schwa visit? James, you want to answer at least one of those?
When will the James show be back? The James show will be back. I didn't think that we would ever get a request for that to be back, but maybe we'll just have to find some time to record some James shows.
Yeah, maybe just stick around to the end of the episode.
As for the weather report, there just hasn't been anything exciting going on here for weather in Texas. It's just
Mountain Cedar?
Regular.
Yeah.
Transformers episode will inevitably happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially with, Bumblebee came out, and I want to spend some time talking about this sweet sound wave that I finally purchased. It's been on my list of things. Every time I see one at a Comic-Con, like at a vendor, I'm like, I want it, but I don't want to spend the money, and I finally did it. So we'll have to do a Transformers show. And then can Jovial J and Jedi Schwa visit? You're talking about Jovial J and Jedi Schwa from such great podcasts as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Case Files, and Scarlet Velocity, and they do like 1,000 shows. I can't keep up. And of course, Jedi Schwa does a show called Techno Retro Dads, which I should be on, I think, their next episode. We're working on the schedule on that one, and then we'll have them on our show. Be great. So yes, we will.
Yes to all of your answers.
Yes.
Questions.
Mm-hmm. We will.
What is yes?
Yes is no.
Those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And we did get another submission here, and this one is another one from an anonymous Yahoo Answers user, and they're wondering, does anyone know if it's possible to use a background that would essentially turn my computer monitor into a mirror? ? Scanning a mirror doesn't work. Period.
Well, of course you can turn your computer monitor into a mirror really easy. Step one, first of all, you have to have a computer monitor, right? So is everybody good? All right. Next step. Okay. So you're going to go to Home Depot and you're going to buy a can of metallic silver paint and just couple coats. Bingo. Mirror.
I think they probably just sell some like reflective film you could put on there. But I don't know how well your computer would work after that. So
my favorite thing is scanning a mirror doesn't work. Like they're trying to set the background image on their computer.
Yeah, it's sad. Some people just don't think.
No, they don't.
They don't understand how things work, and it just catches them off guard. I'm sure there is some way to wire a camera to have a live background.
Hey,
that could potentially work. Because I know I've seen people with motion backgrounds that were like feeds from other things, like the space. There's one that you can do the space, whatever space things are out there. I'm sure Elon Musk is behind it somehow.
Sure, he's behind everything.
So I'm sure there's a way to. I'm sure there's some sort of way to do that, and I hope that this Yahoo Answers user was able to find that.
Yes. And so, of course, I mean, that's why they come to us. We are the Geek Experts. If you have a question that you want answered by us, the Geek Experts, head on over to Twitter and use the hashtag Geek Experts.
Or Facebook.
Yeah. Or Zanga.
Or if you have suggestions for show topics, we're open to anything. Or just, you just want to say hi.
Yeah, we're cool. We're hip. We're with it.
Yeah, we talk about this stuff all the time. So
exactly. Well,
we're a fun hang.
Yeah. I mean, everybody listening to the show is a member of and citizen, a card carrying, passport wielding member of the Geek State. So this show is your show. So if you do have topics or suggestions, please send them our way. All right, it's time for the pick of the week. And since I went first last time, James, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, so my pick of the week, I decided to go ahead and stay on theme with mine. We were talking earlier about ways to play retro games. One of the ways that if you have cartridges, but you have an HD TV and things like that, and sometimes trying to find HD TVs with inputs that fit your aged consoles is difficult.
Yes.
So there's a company called Hyperkin out there. They have an item called the Retron 5. What this is essentially it's a retro clone console. It's about as close as they come without spending tons of money on your clone console. I think there's like an NZ SNES clone console that's like $200.
Isn't that one like it's like carved out of solid aluminum or something silly?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
ridiculous.
keep up with that. But the Retron 5 is an awesome option. I think they're like between $160, $175 somewhere in there, depending on sales that are going on. But it will play NES, Famicom, Super NES, Super Famicom, Genesis with an adapter. It'll play Mega Drive if you're interested in that. And it will also play Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance. So it's an awesome, easy choice. One HDMI slot it goes into. Another one, if you are kind of trying to do this, accomplish the same goal using your old, your actual console, there's a company called Pound. They sell their products through either Amazon or limited run games, but they sell HDMI cables or converters for the item that uses the actual. So you can buy AV to HDMI, which takes the signal and converts it, but this takes the actual what's actually coming off of the board and converts it to HDMI. So it's a little bit better of an image, and they currently have them for PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, and I believe SNES. So there are some options, and Xbox, original
That's
Xbox.
fantastic.
So that's another option. It's Pound, and they are available on both Amazon and limited run games.
So my pick of the week is actually a Twitter account, and every time one of their tweets comes across my timeline, I always either snicker to myself or look, there's a little giggle. It's Film Clickbait. So at Film Clickbait on Twitter. And basically what they do is they take a news story that's coming out of some garbage, location. Not all actually. I mean, there's some good like channels and publications that they've done. But for the most part, it's just clickbaity headlines, and then their comment above it is the thing that they're trying to, bury the lead. There's one that's from Screen Rant, and their headline is 14 spoilers fans missed at the start of superhero movies. And then Film Clickbait's comment is, someone has just learned about what foreshadowing is.
That's awesome.
There's one about The Mandalorian, and it says, a new report may have revealed the runtimes of Star Wars The Mandalorian episodes. And Film Clickbait just commented about 45 minutes.
Yeah,
it's like, don't exactly. You don't need to
every
click.
Episode is.
Exactly. I just think it's brilliant. I'd love to do a whole section on like just clickbait and all that.
That kind of reminds me. So there was a popular subreddit for a while, Details, and it started very informative, like crazy little details of things, intricate details. But it got to where it was like just stuff that was obvious, right? And then so another person created a subreddit called Stupid Movie Details or Dumb Movie Details, one of those two. And it's stuff like when RoboCop takes off his helmet in RoboCop 3, you can see where he was shot. And it's like no shit.
Oh, I love it. And this is on Reddit, or is this a different account?
It's movie details, and I think it's stupid movie details is the other, but I could be wrong about that. Sorry, that was an off the whim pick of the week.
That's okay. That's all right. As soon as we're done with the show, I'm looking it up.
And I don't think we said a single incorrect thing this whole week. So if we have a correction, we can just use that as the correction. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Tweet us or send us a message on Facebook if you found something that we said that was wrong.
Hashtag stuff you missed.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us on an exciting episode of the Geek State. But before we wrap up, we're doing some contests for giving us reviews on Apple Podcasts, because that's how a lot of people find their podcasts. They're finding them other places, but Apple allows users to leave reviews and ratings. And so we kind of charged everybody with going on there, hitting subscribe and leaving a review. And to one lucky person that I'm going to pick at random, and they're going to win a Funko Pop Stormtrooper. And it's Funko Pop Star Wars number 5, I believe. So it's one of the early ones from that line, and it's a pretty cool little Funko Pop, and we're going to give it away. And it's going to Daniel Fern, and he's somebody who sent us a Twitter question during Geek Experts. So Daniel,
and that did not get him another entry, just for the record.
No, absolutely not. Totally fair. If you want to win our latest giveaway. So first of all, Daniel, if you'll send me a message on Twitter, so just send me a direct slide into my DMs. Send me your shipping information, and I will get you your Funko Pop sent to you ASAP. This week, we are giving away another Funko Pop, but this one's a little different. It is a, let me see what the name of it on it is real quick. Hold on 1 second. I'm back. Okay. So this week it is a GameStop exclusive. So you had to have bought one of their mystery boxes from last year. It's a Street Fighter Funko Pop from the 8-bit series, and it's Ryu from Street Fighter. And he's done in this really cool pixelated 8-bit format. And this Funko Pop can be yours if you go to Apple Podcasts and you leave us a 5-star review, and then send us a message on Twitter or on Facebook to let us know that the person that left the review is you, because some of the names and usernames are different between Twitter and stuff, and I don't know exactly who it is. And so it's easier to get in contact with you through Twitter, because I can't reach out to iTunes and ask who random person is. So if you want to get
Facebook.
Yeah, or Facebook. You can, or Zanga, or whatever. Like, hit up my live journal. Send me a little message, and that way I can make sure I've got your name in the entry for that. But you can win the Street Fighter Ryu 8-bit by going to Apple Podcasts, searching the Geek State, which you're probably already subscribed to, and getting a 5-star rating, and leave us a quick review. The ratings are great. So if you don't have time and you just want to click that button with 5-star, that's helpful. But to be entered to win, you actually have to leave a review. So you need to write a little something about the show there. That way, people like at Apple will notice our show, and then we'll get thrown into like new and notable or what's hot. So I keep obsessively checking. So make our dream a reality, and help everybody out here in the Geek State. That being said, make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels so you can get the latest, hear the minute we drop a brand new episode. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/thegeekstate. On Twitter, we're at the Geek State Pod. And if you want to send us an email, we just set up our show email. It's thegeekstate@gmail.com. So if you want to send us a question, if you've got a comment or concern, send us an email at thegeekstate@gmail.com. So from all of us here at the Geek State, stay excellent to each other, and we'll see you next time.
Holy harvest, Batman. Good to be out in the country. Batman, Robin!
Hi, Mr. Brown. Robin and I were hoping we could buy a snack.
This is the place to get some great ones.
Be my guest.
Apples, tomatoes, celery. It all looks good to me.
Right, Robin. Fresh fruits and vegetables make some of the best snacks there are.
What do we have, Batman?
Any of them, Robin, you can't miss.
That hits the spot.
Better than junk food, Robin.
Ladies and gentlemen, from North Texas, it's time for the Geek State After Show, The James Show.
Yeah! Oh my goodness, it's so good to be here. The weather outside is frightful, but something is so delightful. It's delightful to be here with you, Christopher.
Hey.
Christopher.
Yes, sir.
I really, it's going to be a short interview. Just one question to ask you.
All right, fire away. I'm ready.
What's for dinner?
It's going to be grilled chicken breast. It's a chipotle lime marinated chicken breast. And that's it, because I am fat and I'm working on my fitness.
Like Fergie.
Yep.
So you can witness. Ooh-wee!
Some might say I'm Fergalicious. No, they won't. No one will say that.
But they will say that you're up in your gym just working on your fitness so delicious.